Hello, welcome to South of Left Field. My name is Jimmy, and anybody who's been, listening to my meanderings, you know that I like to talk about people going rogue, leaving the two parties. It's a theme of mine. Well, I've come to a realization. Paying attention to the things that are going on in the Senate, the things that are going on in the House, reading some of the issues about upcoming elections, I suddenly realize that there is, in fact, a large body of voters who are going rogue. Now, it's not exactly what I was hoping for when I encouraged people to go rogue. And in case you hadn't figured it out already, it's the Trump wing of the Republican Party. Here's the thing that I find most remarkable. The paradigm through most of my life has consisted of politicians of both parties having their stories and having their votes spun by spin doctors, using the corporate-owned media, CNN, that's the Democrat, Fox News, that's the Republican Party, but pretty much every major media source is owned by the upper class, and they only spin their stories in accordance with the upper class desires. So you've got the corporate press trying to play sheep herder and getting people to vote for the respective party, whichever one they're supporting. You've got special groups. Lincoln Project is a good example of one. It puts out all kinds of information, and their goal is, again, let's herd the sheep into the booth and let's get the thing done that we want done in the voting booth. You have think tanks and polls that the politicians use to spin their campaign lies. I call them lies, not promises, because they have no intention of fulfilling most of them. I can't think of anybody I've ever met who says you should put any money down on a campaign promise being fulfilled. As a matter of fact, it's a story when one is. So the game is played. Politicians using the wealth provided by corporations and wealthy individuals to hire firms and contract the story, which is fed to the general population, and those who do choose to participate in voting march dutifully into the booth and they vote whichever way they do for one of the two main parties. And then the elected politicians go about doing what they intended to do from the very beginning and don't pay any attention to what the general public wants. That's the key. Don't pay any attention to the public. And that's been the thing that I've tried to point out. Until we as Americans start punishing politicians for not paying attention to what we want, they're not going to start. Well, they've started. At least Republicans have. Man, if you want to watch a hilarious circus, watch McConnell and company as they sit there and do the two-step and try not to outrage the Trump supporter segment of the Republican Party. It's large. There's tens of millions of voters. A lot of the senators and members of the House that are Republican are scared to oppose it. They're scared to impeach Trump. They're scared to say anything bad about him. They are flat scared. They had a secret vote on the number 3 Republican in the House, and she kept her position by a margin of 2-1. But they wouldn't dare make a public vote to punish Representative Green by taking away her seats. They sat on their hands and waited for the other party to pull it up in front of the full House and stripped her of her seats on committees. What does this mean? It means tail is wagging the dog, folks. When is the last time you've ever seen this happen? When is the last time you have ever seen a large number of politicians afraid of their voting constituency. When has that ever happened? Who are these people listening to? Well, it's not their representatives and it's not their senators. It's a very interesting thing for me to watch. Now, I know I put forward things like doing away with the Electoral College, making significant changes so that we can have more than two parties. And I understand when I talk about things like that, there is something of the pie in the sky to it because the two parties will never tolerate having that change made. This little duopoly has been dancing together for 150 years. They know as long as they hold the field, they're in high cotton. And so they're not going to want to upset the apple cart. The only way that would ever happen would be if the politicians became terrified of their people. In the movie V for Vendetta, it says people should not fear their government. The government should fear the people. Holy cow. Watch the Republicans. Watch them toe tap around saying anything about white supremacy, Proud Boys, QAnon. I mean, they'll make some little statement, but the thing is, they're so busy talking out of both sides of their mouth, it's almost like another language altogether. And they're afraid to take a stand. And I'm sorry if it offends people, but look, you take an oath to defend the Constitution of the United States of America. The Electoral College reflects what the states count when they hold ballots. And I know lots of noise was made about fraud, yet no real significant proof of any kind ever came forward. I mean, if you're going to scream fraud and you want to halt an election or overturn an election, you got to have actual evidence. You can't just say, oh, it's fraud because I know it is. Or because some odd person told their cousin who told their cousin's uncle who told their friend and co-worker that, yeah, they saw this. And now that stuff doesn't fly. You got to have real evidence and you got to have enough of it that it makes a difference. And nobody, 60 court cases, nobody has laid down the documents. Nobody has presented the affidavits. Nobody has stood forward to say, I'll testify and this is what I've seen. So these people in the House and the Senate who tried to overturn the presidential election were doing it in defiance of their responsibilities under the Constitution of the United States of America. They were doing it out of fear of the tens of millions of voters who owe their allegiance to Trump above all else. These people have gone rogue. Now, it's not entirely one-sided. The Democrats have their little kerfluffle, but I'm here to tell you the progressives and the noise that they make inside the Democratic Party is a tempest in a teacup compared to what the Trump wing of the Republican Party is doing. They have the senators and the members of the House cowering in terror and afraid to do their duty in accordance with their oath to the United States Constitution. They're afraid they'll lose their seats if they try. Whether I agree with the change these folks are after or not, doesn't matter. I'm smiling, people, because this is an example of what happens when Americans go rogue. This is an example of what happens when Americans try to take back control of their government. If you want to have an impact, you need to go rogue. Watch what these people are doing. Look at the politicians cowering in front of them. Try to imagine the billionaires who are sitting there with their piles of money, helpless because they can't get a handle on how to herd these people into doing what the billionaires want. They can't control them. Neither can the politicians, and the politicians live in fear of them. So from south of left field, folks, the game's afoot and it's entertaining. I hope you'll tune in. I'd love for you to share this. Kick it around. Think about it from that perspective. I think you'll be engaged.